Okay, well, good morning everybody. Today I'm going to brew an American style IPA. It's going to be using lots of Simcoe hops, Cascade hops, several different types of crystal, plenty of pale malt, looking to hit about 6.8% ABV, about 60 IBUs. So starts off with a water treatment, fairly basic water treatment. I'm just going to use carbonate reducing solution and use that at a rate of 0.3 millilitres per litre. Camden tablets, just use a quarter of a tablet for the mashed water, and then I'll use a quarter of a tablet for the sparge, and then a teaspoon of gypsum, which will go into here for the mash itself, and then I'll put another one in when I do the sparge. So I'll just sort out the water treatment. So I've got 17 litres in the hot liquor ton. That equates to 5.1 millilitres. So like that, carbonate reducing solution. Then I'll just take a quarter of the Camden, stick it in some water from there, let that dissolve. And then I'll just put a teaspoon of gypsum in now. Now I'm going to get my water up to around about 75 degrees centigrade, which will give me a mash temperature of about 66 by the time the brain's taken its bit of heat out of it. Okay, well the next stage is to preheat the mash tun. This is the mash tun that I'm using. It's another home built one. It just uses a fermenting bucket, ball valve, a camping plate on the bottom to use as a false bottom, and then just a copper take-off pipe. Does seem to work quite well. So I'm just using just a kettle of hot water, just to get some heat into there. Now, the method of insulating that I use seems very crude, and I've tried cool boxes, etc., but I still find that using a sleeping bag with polystyrene plate on the top, which I just cut out of a sheet of packing, is actually extremely effective and only lose about a degree to a degree and a half over the course of a mash, so quite happy with that. So I'll just leave that now just to warm through a bit while I measure out my grain. Okay, so here's the gravity setup that I'm using today for the actual brewing process. So at the top here we've got the hot liquor tun, which is now at the right temperature for doing the sparge at. And over here we've got the mash tun from earlier. I've now moved it over to here, which is looking a nice colour, and there's just the line comes from there into there. I do actually have this, which I made recently for the sparge, but it needs a bit more work yet. It doesn't quite work properly. So, and then from here it goes through a ball valve and along and into the boiler. Okay, so the first works hops can go in. Nice fresh Cascades. And I'll start the runoff. Just this particular bit I'm careful with, because as the work goes down through that pickup tube, you get quite a strong siphon effect, so just to control the rate you just have to be quite careful initially. Now it's quite a slow runoff, perhaps by some people's standards, but I am fly sparging here. I do usually end up with an efficiency of about 80%, so I think it works reasonably well. Now the sparge is finished, so just got the elements switched on, both elements switched on. So I've got, just started heating up now. Okay, now what I do at this stage is I recirculate about 5 litres of wort, and the reason I'm doing this is Obviously the first work that goes into the boiler is going to be stronger and more sugars in it, and I'm not actually convinced that it mixes properly because a load of it goes into all the pipe work. So I like to just rinse it through, and then once I've done that, I'll then take a reading and then just see what the starting gravity is of the boil. Now I'll just do a gravity reading on this. This is a sample that's been cooled down to 20 degrees to get an accurate reading. Now that's giving a reading which looks to be 1.060, it's actually 1.057 because this hydrometer reads 3 points high. I've checked that with water to calibrate it. This is the pre-boil gravity. Now this is actually quite a useful reading. So it's rapidly approaching boiling point now. This is the point at which I start to actually keep a close eye on it, because a boil over can start to become likely once you get to about 98-99 degrees. I'm also now going to actually put a method of extracting all the steam, because it does generate a lot of steam, this boil. Okay, well the boil's being reached now, so it's getting quite vigorous. Now this is the point at which a boil over can happen. I don't think it possibly might not on this occasion. Having the first boil hops does help to stabilise it a little bit, but if you ever are getting close, I just find that just giving it a bit of a stir, just to sort of help break the foam down, does help get it going nicely. Now I won't keep it quite this vigorous. What I'll actually do is I'll switch off one of the two elements, and now that will now calm down nicely. Well, the cooling coil's just been popped in. There's another 15 minutes now roughly left for the boil. So I've just switched on the second element, which will just get it going a bit more aggressively, just to sanitise it. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the hot wort through the exit. The reason I do this is to ensure that all of the pipe work that runs through to the fermenter is sanitised, simply by factor of the wort is boiling. I just ease it off, and I just make sure that all of it goes into the boiling liquid. Okay, now it's time to put in the aroma hops, which Simcoe hops, which are quite nice hops. I've not used these before, but I've had plenty of beers with them in. Quite high alpha acid at 12.9. Smell fantastic. Let's just see whether we're getting the 100 grams that we promised. No gram out, but I'll let them off that. I always just like to just break them up a little bit. And I know that the boil will break up most of it, but these are very sticky hops. Lots of oils in them. The aroma coming off these is incredible. And I'm just going to put the Protoflop tablet in as well. So I'll put all those in now for the last 10 minutes. Now I always like to just work the aroma hops in, because they haven't got all that much time there, so I like to make sure that every last bit of them is well used. Right, well the boil's just about up now, so I'll switch off the main element. And what I've got here is basically got a washing machine tap plumbed into some washing machine line, which then goes outside the window and into the outside tap, so it just gives me a crude control. Now that's flowing at a good flow rate, and it's very, very efficient. I find this coil. They're not quite as good as a copper one, but it is easier to clean. So our gravity reading we've just taken of 1.057, we can now use a fairly simple formula to work out what our original gravity is going to be without having to take any readings at a later stage. So the way we do this is there's a formula that says the pre-volume times the pre-gravity equals the post-volume times the post-gravity, which basically means this in its number of points, which is 57, and the pre-boil volume, which I've measured as being 29 litres, and then we use the post-boil volume to work out what the original gravity is going to be. So it actually simplifies to this, which is going to be 29 times 57 over our post-boil volume, which I've just measured as being 25.5, and that will equal the number of points that we've got. So 29 times 57 divided by 25.5 gives us 64.8, which its nearest damn-it is 65. So that's our original gravity. And then from that I can then get a good idea of what our strength is going to be. We know that the attenuation roughly of Nottingham yeast tends to be around about 75%, so 75% 65 gravity points gives us 48.8 points. 48.8 times by 0.129, which is one of the ways that Customs Excise do it, to work out gravity, gives us 6.3% ABV. Now that's assuming 75% attenuation. In reality it'll probably go a little bit lower than that, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Now the final bit, running off, temperature showing 22 degrees, I'm happy with that. Just check. Just put that in there. Gonna run off. Well, owing to the strength of this bit, I'm going to put 2 sachets of yeast in. I was going to use Nottingham yeast, but what I thought was Nottingham was actually Windsor, so I used 2 sachets of US05 instead, which is sort of my house yeast to all intents and purposes. And I wouldn't normally use 2, but I think the strength of this beer is probably a wise idea. Sorted.